Thank you for joining this session of the 2022 North Country Leadership Summit. Before getting started and turning it over to our presenter, we want to give a thank you and shout out to all of this year's summit sponsors. Without the continued support, we wouldn't be able to host such a successful event. So we're always so thankful for our sponsors. And a few housekeeping items. Please place any questions you have for Jill right in the chat box, and we will address those during the Q&A session after the presentation. We ask that all attendees remain muted with their videos off. And as a reminder, all recordings will be recorded and available on our Summit webpage in a few weeks. And with that, I want to turn it over to Jill Van Hoesen from Westelcom to talk about the rural digital divide.
Okay. There we are. Okay. Can you see my screen there, Nancy?
Yes, looks great.
All right, perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jill Van Hoesen. I'm the Director of Business Development for Westelcom. We're your local internet service and phone company here in the North Country. And I'm here to talk to you today about the rural digital divide and how fiber broadband can help eliminate the North Country rural divide that we have going on up here, both in telehealth, education, and a lot of other areas. And the reason that I'm here talking about the rural divide today is really because Monday we had some fellow committee members, Jason Guzzo and David Wolf from the Adirondack Broadband Committee, talking to you about other options for connectivity and all of the work that has been done in the North Country to bring internet service to the underserved up here. But even with all of this work that some of these folks have been flagshipping for years now, the rural divide is still here. And basically the rural divide is just the lack of adequate high-speed broadband availability in many rural areas still here in the North Country. And we've had this challenge. We've been working on this challenge. I sit on quite a few committees that are dealing with this, both again from a telehealth as well as a connectivity point of view. But this challenge really finally exploded and really started to get some real backbone when we were forced into the pandemic and people were forced home to do telehealth appointments, homeschooling, college work, and even remote work from home. This really exposed the insignificant broadband as well as fiber connectivity that we had across the North Country. And basically, to eliminate the divide, we really are going to have to continue to work together, both at committee levels, with government levels, as well as with private businesses, towns, municipalities, schools, health initiatives, things like that, because it is continuing to result in lower productivity around here. Education is lagging, not only here in the North Country due to COVID, but again, this whole lack of remote connectivity from home and stuff does cause a lack of education from a rural point of view, especially when you get into the higher levels like colleges and even high schools where they are offering distance learning. And it, of course, always is an economic development factor, because if you don't have the infrastructure, let's think of fiber connectivity, internet connectivity now as no different than telephone, no different than electricity, and even no different than water. And if you cannot get those vital, basically those vital necessities to everyone and to everyone's home at an affordable rate, then we're really never going to be able to close the divide between rural America and metropolitan and urban areas. And we're never going to be able to get the expansion across the North Country of basically the vital services that we need. Basically what's happened here, I think, and I kind of like this quote at the top. I think this comes a little bit from a political realm, but there's always been a little bit of a downstate, upstate sort of thing going on in New York State, as everyone knows. And for a long time, it was like, if they want better internet, they can just move down to the city. They don't need to be living rural and things like that. Well, as you can see on this slide here, there has been a shift, and the shift has been going back out of metropolitan areas into urban areas, into rural areas, and even at some points taking rural and urban and combining them a little bit, which is great from a population point of view, but I'm not sure that we necessarily sometimes have the right people in the right positions in the political realm, as well as some other places that are really pushing for us to get the necessities that we need so that we're successful in the urban areas, in the rural areas, especially in places like Northern New York, though we're getting better at it. But again, I think what some people don't realize when they're talking about allocating money, different kinds of endeavors and things like that, is that there are certain economic and essential endeavors that are really suited to the North Country and rural areas like the North Country. Everyone's very familiar with agriculture up here. Big part of the North Country. Forestry, mining, energy production. As we all know, windmills are very common up here now. We're also getting a lot of the solar panel farms. And again, we were really great in large in manufacturing in the 70s up here. And I think there's going to be different manufacturing as the world has changed, but different manufacturing that'll continue to come here. But again, this stuff needs a great infrastructure, and the infrastructure that really begins to bring people to a place and bring manufacturing and bring these businesses that we need is high-speed internet availability, because nobody can do anything really anymore without the internet. So, and especially when you talk about transcontinental transportation, I mean, there's a lot of places here that has a lot of waterways, the St. Lawrence River. If we didn't have that kind of economic activity up here, where would the North Country be? But we're still lacking in basically adequate high-speed broadband. And again, I in some ways, COVID was very good for some of these initiatives that we have. I know it's given some of the committees I sit on some extra boost. It's gotten us some extra money. It's gotten people to think about, wow, there really is that divide that I was talking about before. And again, to this day, unfortunately, even what are we, almost 2 years out of the pandemic now, quote unquote, but we still have people that cannot remote work, cannot remote shop, cannot do telehealth, which I know is very important to this particular audience here. Distance learning, and even for the most simple part of this, entertainment. You still cannot cut that cord per se and just really be able to use streaming broadband like other people do. And the bottom line is that if you want a rural population to support these rural initiatives, then you've got to be able to have basically fiber internet that's going to be able to provide these essential economic activities that we need to continue to grow here in the North Country. And really unfortunate, and I put this slide up here more for anything else to basically kind of start to wrap some folks' heads around it, because in 2022, I'm really a little disappointed that I'm saying that we are still living in medical deserts up here in the North Country. And I think we are. I think COVID again has really, as far as the workforce is concerned, is really proposing some challenges. Again, not just here in the North Country, but here in particular. I mean, especially here when we talk about folks that live like an hour away from their nearest hospital. And these are the type of folks that when they're living that far from a hospital, I mean, and they're not going to have internet access, because, if you're talking about someone who's an hour from Clifton, fine, Lord knows where they're living. So, they're not going to have internet access. That's what we're here to do, is to identify those folks, identify these pockets of people that don't have internet connectivity, so they really are not able to enjoy life in the 21st century. And same thing goes, on the other hand, medical education. Education is just so important. So many folks had their education a little, pushed to the side. A lot of folks were really hard pressed with the virtual learning and things like that. So there's a lot of catch up that just needs to be done about that. And when it comes to college education, they were just before COVID starting to do a lot of online courses and things like that. Well, now they're pushing that still, but we still have folks that aren't there. And I put this question on the bottom of this slide, and I just would like people to just kind of think about it. I mean, you know, how many 25-year-olds with a college education that's really looking to, better themselves and have a really great life and start a really good professional career are going to stay in a poor, rural, northern New York, small rural community that has really poor internet service? I mean, I just don't see it. I mean, chances are if they don't have internet service out there, they might not even have good cell service. We're going to start to talk about some of that now too. Because like I say on this slide here, I mean, basically we are folks that are still living in an internet wasteland too. I personally live on the Oxbow Road in Theresa, and I recently, as in like 3 years ago, finally got internet to my home. But even then, it was still coaxial cable spectrum. So really, we're looking at 2019, and I still did not have the ability to have fiber to my home. And again, that's just not conjunctive to really being moving forward in the 21st century and being able to put these towns on the map, be able to bring in talent, and actually be able to continue to grow and prosper. Because really, overall, everyone is starting to really begin to rely on internet connectivity and broadband connectivity. And really, to reach the full potential, you need to have higher speeds and more reliability, because the internet is changing all the time. I want to talk a little bit about internet, because sometimes folks get a little confused about the difference between internet and broadband. And I know if you guys did come to Dave and Jason's session on Monday, they did a really great job about talking about how they're mapping this out, and they've been working for, years on making sure that we're telling the state where it is and where it's not, and the right people are going after the right grants to be able to give the right service in the right place at the right time. Well, the internet itself really doesn't have anything to do with that fiber there, or the fixed wireless, or even your cell tower. The internet is just basically just that. It's a bunch of computers that are out there in the quote unquote cloud, and it's been changing and evolving ever since it's came, and it's really never has been defined. And it did become publicly available in 1995. I know that I was one of the first people to get a computer, and that was when, just like I have on this slide here, Cisco and dial-up was the only basically option you had, and it was dial-up, and it was really like 0.03 megabytes per second, which is really pretty slow. Think about the kind of things you did on the internet back then in 1995. And that was, 25 years ago. So the internet itself, technology has come a long way in 25 years, but we still have a long way to go here in the North Country. Because when we talk about internet, that's one thing. Internet is all of that stuff that's out there, all the stuff you can access. Now it's games, and it's, learning, and it's movies, and it's YouTube, and it's Facebook. But broadband access and access to the internet is what is continuing to change it all the time. Because applications now are requiring more and more bandwidth. And the methods of transmission, like DSL, that used to be that old dial-up, cable modem, which is the spectrums that we have now, and even the satellites now are merging out emerging out here in the North Country. And we have Starlink now, that, things like that. So they are starting to come out here and be available they did win some grants in the last round of the grant process. But again, that is some high bandwidth broadband service, higher than the DSL, higher than the cable modem necessarily, not always necessarily, but it is, going to give us a good experience. But that experience that we have now is about 125 times more bandwidth needy than it was in the 90s. So that's when we talk about broadband access and how it needs to continue to grow, and the access to the home needs to be larger, and quote unquote, we'll call it a pipe for lack of a better way to look at it. The pipe that goes into everyone's home needs to be bigger, with bigger speeds based on better technology and also newer technology. And that's what we're going to talk about next. Because on this screen here, this is about the FCC and how they first began to talk about broadband and what was needed so that folks would have adequate broadband to their home. Well, again, we're talking, a few years ago now, and that all started out at 25 by 3. Again, if anybody was on Monday with Dave and Jason, they were talking about now that it's, the bare minimum somebody needs now is 100 by 20. So that's 100 up, 20 download. But if you go ahead and look across this screen, excuse me, this is a really good chart I find here. Kind of talks about what is really going to be needed in a household. And again, this is the bandwidth demand that is just keeps growing and growing. And it needs to be more appropriate because you can't keep going back to people's houses and running new technology. And some of the other technology that's at people's houses is just not adequate to handle what needs to be done in this day and age. So exactly what we're saying here on this slide also is that networks, and when we're talking networks here, we're not talking that network that comes to your house. We're talking about the networks that folks like Westelcom, Dank, even Spectrum, Slick, that we're providing. Our networks are the ones that should be a bare minimum of 100 megabytes by 100 megabytes or 1,000 by 1,000. Someone like Westelcom, who is really running a mission critical network, and for the folks here that are from the telehealth area, our backbone runs along with Dank and supplies services to the NCTP network as well as the Action network. And we're basically a multi 10 gig. And when you're talking gig, a gig is 1,000 times more than this megabytes that are on the screen. So basically, we have a multi 10 gig network, and we have 1,000 gig core capacity. So that means that we have all of these extra megabytes that we can be pushing out simultaneously at one time to businesses, houses, residents. But that's where we're actually over subscribing right now, and providing a network, a bare bone network in basically in the backbone for folks, so that we're ready to supply this to people as we can get into the homes. Because us providing our network and keeping our core network going, and then our actual build out to businesses and down roads through pipes, that's where the actual cost of building the fiber network comes in. That's why it's so important when people send out surveys for telehealth and how is your broadband and what else are you not getting for telehealth and those kind of surveys. Or then you get other surveys with what kind of service do you have and what do you need, what aren't you getting. Those are the kind of things that really need to be answered, because that's where the grant money goes, and that's where it gives everybody the opportunity to show this is what the people in the North Country need, and this is what we can turn around and give, because we have providers that A that can do this, provider B that can do that, and those sort of things. Now, basically, when we start talking about all of the different kinds of connectivity to the internet, okay, wanted to step back for a minute and just kind of talk to folks again about DSL and the coaxial cable, because basically that is different than fiber. Okay, so every time you're sending a signal down through coaxial cable, i.e., normally like a Spectrum connection, that is basically done by electrical forces. So every time it goes through the copper line there, you're losing a little bit of speed, bandwidth. That's the sort of thing that makes it slow for you to load. There are a lot more, again, Starlink satellites, as well as a few others that are actually really better than the higher level satellites that were out there in the beginning. But again, they do have a lot of limited capacity, it seems, mostly on the upload side. and you have much more latency, and latency again is the jitter. Seems like if you're watching your television and it starts sputtering a little bit and everything, or the voice isn't with the video, that's the kind of stuff that's latency and jitter causes. And wireless here, wireless and the things like Hudson Valley Wireless is doing, there is a time and a place for that, and there is a time and a place for cell. Cell coverage is not going to go away. There's a lot of talk about that narrow beam and the 5G and how that, the U-band 5G wideband is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to us. And again, that is great. And cell coverage and cell service is going to be part of the future. But I think what some people always neglect to remember, because maybe they don't even realize, is fiber is what drives those towers. Fiber is what drives the cell towers. Fiber is what is originally even drives a spectrum coaxial network. So basically fiber and its connectivity and its ability to be the best conduit is what really is connecting everything here, and really needs to be the choice of broadband access in Northern New York. Just like I said here, fiber really is the backbone to bridge the rural divide. In fiber, we deploy it. Slick deploys it. A lot of people up here deploy fiber, and it's done airily. Excuse me, I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. And underground, and it really is, like I said earlier, it's essential for the 5G networks and high-speed broadband services that we need to bring to all of rural New York. And it really does need to be looked at as the backbone. There's a time and a place for cell coverage, time and a place for fixed wireless, and there will always be a time and a place for cable. But we need to look towards fiber in the future that it can bring for us as the backbone for connectivity in the North Country. And I think the one thing that people don't understand, or again, don't really think about, and that's why I'm here today, is to talk about how your business and your family, you're demanding faster internet speeds. And this is to meet, your operational objectives, or this is just to meet some of your fundamental needs at your home, be it work from home, school from home, or telehealth. Fiber internet is basically faster, it's more reliable, and it brings this important benefit of being able to provide the symmetrical speeds. And basically symmetrical speeds means that your download and your upload are the same. And this is where you have less of that latency and jitter. And so basically, like I say on the slide, the employees in your home, or in your office, or the family in your home, they're constantly uploading and downloading data. I mean, and if you're in your house and you've got your phone on Wi-Fi versus using cell data, then you're using whatever pipe is coming into your home. So if you're sucking on that and you've got somebody else doing that, somebody else is watching TV, you're all taking that bandwidth. So when we go back and we look back at that slide that I had up earlier about how the bandwidth speeds for a business, for a home, are just continuing to increase, you can see why, because everything is constantly moving to the internet, constantly moving to streaming, constantly moving to just always on. And I don't think that's gonna change anytime soon. And here, I just wanted to kind of show folks the different ways that wireless and fiber work together, and the different ways that it can actually be delivered to your home or to your business. The first one here on this slide is fiber to the node. Fiber to the node is normally a way when there's a large node of equipment, we'll call it equipment, where they're holding the majority of the bandwidth. And that's at a particular point. Normally this is done by a network provider, someone like Westelcom or a Slick, even a DANK, depending on the particular deployment here. But all of the quote unquote bandwidth is held in the node. And then there's the one pipe that goes in and feeds into the building. Fiber to the curb, a little bit different, but still does kind of the same thing. They bring it a little bit closer to the building, and then they still pump it out across everything that goes into the building, meaning it's still that shared pipe. Fiber to the building is just that. They bring it right into the building. You have your own equipment there, and from there you'll take it and you'll do whatever you need to do, whatever it is in each one of those offices. Normally, there can be a large pipe that comes in and then it is shared between different offices. You can have one pipe that's shared between only one company, and then they in turn share that out, all different ways that that can be done. Now, the bottom here is the fiber to the home. And, fiber to the home here kind of looks very similar in the building setup, but if you notice, there is an actual purple line that goes to each one of those floors. So that's why it kind of represents fiber to the home, because what happens with fiber to the home is you have, quote unquote, that same business connectivity, quote unquote, level of fiber coming into your home, no different than most people have coming into their business at this point. So again, that fiber, with its ability to be symmetrical, with its ability to, automatically, it can be on this next screen, like we talk about, that the transmission capacity can be increased almost immediately and infinitively, and supply more bandwidth, again, up to the level of the network. It's kind of everything I've been talking about today kind of builds upon each other. We were on that screen, we were talking about how all of the bandwidth needs for a business or a household are going to go up, and they're going to continue to go up to 2030. And then we also talk about how networks, anything that's built after 2021, needs to be at least that 1,000 by 1,000 meg. So of course, it's someone like Westelcom who wants to always think about futurizing. So that's why we're already up in that 100 or that 1,000 gigabyte capacity, because we are serving off tons and tons of bandwidth in different configurations to different businesses and other organizations. And basically, there really is no other communication medium right now that is as effective or future-proof. Now, I don't want to say that 20 years from now, I'm not going to be sitting somewhere and there's going to be something better than fiber. Could be, but right now, this is really our key to being able to really bring the North Country into the 21st century and really be able to utilize most of what a lot of people that live in metropolitan areas already take for granted. And here, this is just another quick slide here on fiber to the home. It's just a quick slide that shows you this was a 2019 Broadband Experience Index. And basically, just anyone who has fiber to their home, they're like 99% satisfied. Cable, 69% satisfied. We talk about wireless people that are using the Verizon hotspots, someone who's using just a hotspot on their phone, that's what they're talking about there. And DSL or fiber to the node, that's also what we're talking about. There's a node out, and they serve multiple people from that one node that's being served from a variable speed over on the other side. And then you do see satellite. So again, it is getting better. It still does lag in when it comes to actual experience and when people go out and answer surveys. Like I was telling you earlier, that people do really need surveys answered. This is actually, I wanted to show folks an actual speed test. This is an actual speed test at my house. I know I told you earlier in the presentation that I had Spectrum. I did have Spectrum. Then, about a year ago, I was like, okay, I'm in. Couldn't get fiber into my house soon enough. So now I have my own ONT, Verizon Fiber, into my house. And you can see on the left here, this is a speed test. At this point, I had my laptop on. It was using my wireless connection in my home. So that means it was, going out and checking for email. I had Alexa on. And I had my Fire Recast going. I never know if my Fire Recast is recording or not. But you can see here that out in Theresa, even though fiber has been there about a year, we're still a little oversubscribed, because I know that I did not actually tell Verizon that I want almost 200 megs on a download and almost 400 on an upload, because Lord knows that I wouldn't be getting that for $39 a month. What this shows is that fiber to the node out there in Verizon, in Theresa, is oversubscribed right now because they don't have a lot of subscribers on it. So basically on the left, that's my speed test, almost 200 down, almost 400 up, and I'm pinging at 83 with a little bit of jitter. And what I did for this particular example for you folks here during this presentation, all I did was turn on one of our televisions and started streaming YouTube. And what I wanted to show folks here is that there's my download. Okay, my download, I lost, what did I lose? Okay, 93 to 39. I lost almost 60 megabytes of download just starting to stream. Lost another 20 on the upload. So the reason I'm bringing that to you is that if you at your business or you at your home is using DSL, not DSL, Spectrum internet, and it's 200 by 10, and you go to stream, if you look here, I lost 20 megabytes just by starting to stream here. So if you've only got 10 on a 200 on an upload, but it would be 10 on a download, then look how much I lost here. That's why things start to lag. That's why people have problems connecting. That's why it might take a long time to load a web page while somebody else is streaming. That's the kind of thing. So I just wanted to kind of show folks that this is how quick you can start to suck up your megabytes as you're actually just working, learning, having a telehealth appointment, or anything else at your house. Again, why it is so important that fiber, symmetrical speeds, fiber to the home, this is what is really going to bridge this divide and bring us into the 21st century and really help us help ourselves so that we can begin to use the technology that is there for us. And again, I'm kind of piggybacking here on Dave and Jason, but New York State does need our help. You know, the Adirondack Broadband Committee has been working tirelessly to get everything mapped, and they were doing such a great job that's actually moved into other different parts of the state. I know there's one down in the Finger Lakes area. There's some stuff going down in the Mohawk Valley area. And this is all kind of actually bridging off of everything that we've done up in the Adirondacks. And I say we very lightly. There's a lot of other folks on that committee that have done some really, really great things with this. But what I had done here is I had put in my address. And again, you can see that Spectrum will give me coax. Okay, again, back to coax. And I'm going to be able to have 1,000 by 25. Now, again, 25 on that upload, if we do go back up to this screen, okay, if I say I can only have 25 on an upload, you look at my upload, how my upload changed just with the streaming. There's almost all of that upload that on this screen, Spectrum tells me that you can get through coax. So, and on the second one though, you will see that those are pretty close. They're actually higher than what I'm even getting. But again, they will give you fiber in my area. And then going down, you'll see there's the satellite providers. And again, like I've been saying all along, satellite is great in some areas. It's an absolute necessity. And if it's all you can get, sometimes it's better than nothing. But it just still, again, cannot compete with fiber to the home and actual broadband access that really will be able to help the North Country continue to grow. The other thing that we wanted to ensure that everyone is familiar with and have been out to the website, has looked around. There is a ton of information out there now on helping households connect. And basically what it comes down to is you sign up for it. There's some particular requirements, has a lot to do with some of the other assistance folks might be getting, some salary requirements, basically income requirements, but it all comes down to you can get $30 a month off of your internet bill. So, that's great. That's especially great for folks that are in a new Verizon area. And again, I'm using myself as an example. I'm only spending $39.99 a month right now for my internet connection. Um, would I be, if I would be available to take advantage of this Helping Household Connect, then it'd be $9.99 for a huge amount of internet, which having that amount of internet coming into my house available at that price opens up all sorts of doors, opens up doors for telehealth options, opens up doors for remote work, opens up doors for school options. There's just all sorts of options that are just opened up completely when you bring fiber into the home. And again, this is why we asked folks up on this other screen here, go out to this website, put in your address. And if I saw this when this came up, I agree with these findings. If you don't, then use that provide feedback button right in the middle of the screen. Give it right back to the PSC and tell them what's not right. Because everybody, and I know Dave and Jason went way further into this than I did on Monday, but everyone needs to help with this, because improving accuracy for one will improve accuracy for all. And we'll get there. I mean, this has not been a just a pan in the hand since it was COVID sort of committee or initiative. This is something that has been going on for quite a few years now. And I think COVID is what helped us get a little bit more into the forefront, but it's not going away. And we really need your help to help us so that we can help everyone. But again, the Affordable Connectivity Program, there's the FFF, the first link here is for the FCC, and the one below is actually for New York State. There is another affordable, they're the same, but they give you some of the similar information. Basically, this is just kind of my last slide. Westelcom is a smart rural provider. We do provide fiber to the home, mostly up in our Shazy Westport area, but we do some of it down in other areas of the state. Also, we're part of the Rural Broadband Association, and we're, as a smart rural community provider, we do bring more than just fiber optic networks to the community. We're hoping to bring growth, economic prosperity, and basically connection, because connection is where it's all at, and fiber is what's going to drive it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jill. That was really awesome, and really just a lot of information that I think we know at like a high level, but hearing all the details, it really puts the pieces together. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. I also placed a few of those links that you had mentioned in the chat for our participants as well, in case they wanted to check them out while we're on the call. The first question I do see is, how do, in quotes, right of way and DEC issues impact service providers trying to expand fiber services in the North Country?
Well, I don't have all of the actual costs it takes. I know that on a large, scale, very broad, we're talking about $60,000 a mile to run fiber. And when New York State imposes taxes on a pole, taxes on being in a right of way, all that does is continue to add to that cost of someone like a Westelcom, like a Slick, and even like the big boys, the Spectrums and the Verizons of the world, as well as the government type authorities like DANK. It adds to our costs to build this network. And again, this network where before, like the slide I talked about, internet is one thing. We're talking about broadband access here. We're talking about fiber broadband access to all. And when you talk about that, that is, again, like electricity almost. We cannot continue to flourish in the North Country until we were able to serve all of the underserved here, and they all have the same internet connectivity that everyone else does. So again, as providers, as the transport network, we are constantly on the political end of this, also having them understand the costs that are associated with that, And that's the kind of thing. Recently, they have taken the right of way, tax fee, whatever we wanted to call it, away. That will help, but I think that we still need to stay top of mind with the people in the state, in as well federally, that are doing the grants and things like that, so that they understand the challenges that we are up against.
Thank you. The next question is, are 5G and Starlink services starting to cover areas that previously had little to no internet service?
Starlink, yes. 5G in the North Country, not so much yet. Now, Starlink did win in the last round of grants, and I'm speaking very broadly here. I would say somewhere within the last 6 to 9 months, maybe 12 months of the last grants that were awarded. Starlink did get quite a few areas over in the Adirondacks. Um, I have not actually heard good, bad, or indifferent, but they are beginning to serve some of those areas. Now, 5G is basically the evolution of cell coverage. Everyone we talk about that we used to have 3G, then we had 4G, then we had LTE, now we're on 5G. Well, I can tell you right now, I'm actually in Albany. So I'm sitting here and my phone displays 5G wideband. Okay. But when I'm sitting in my house right now in Theresa, if I was sitting in my house, I have terrible cell coverage right now. I have terrible cell coverage right now because the tower that serves Theresa and the surrounding areas had some problems with a big storm. We've been told that they're not fixing that tower in that equipment because they're waiting to update it to 5G, which makes sense because different equipment will be needed to produce coverage under that 5G band. But in the interim, people now have poor service because they're not using the most up-to-date equipment and or fixing equipment that could give better service off of a tower. Because remember, you can have as much fiber as you want coming into the tower, but then there's equipment on all of that tower that actually pushes those signals out to people. So it's a very complex system that all works together, though, in the end. 5G, I think, will be a while before we see it in the North Country, though.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions in the chat. We'll give our participants another minute or two if they have anything they want to type out. And I will remind everyone you can unmute yourself if you have anything you'd like to say, comments or questions you want to speak. We invite you to do that as well. While we do wait another moment, I want to remind everyone that tomorrow is our last day of our conference. We'll have 3 additional presentations at 9, 11, and 1 p.m. So we hope to see you as we round out the week. And we want to give a big thank you to Jill for being with us today and taking the time to present on all the awesome work that Westelcom is doing and giving us this great background on the importance of fiber. All right, I don't see anything, so we'll go ahead and close it out for today. But thank you again, Jill, and thank you to everyone who joined us this afternoon. And we hope to see you tomorrow.
Thank you.